This is part two of a four-part explanation of the new development model, which is proposed as an inclusive property development model based on social transformation. It's targeted at needs-based district development, and it's for application as a government intervention in terms of the South African Economic Recovery Program. Part two covers operational structure. Part one of the introduction, if you missed it, is shown on YouTube video, and the link to that video is shown here. So let us take a look at now part two, the operational structure proposed in the new development model. Operational structure is about what makes the plan work. And before we get into that, we'll do a short recap. So this model is being processed as an intervention in terms of the objectives of the South African Economic Recovery Plan. It's to be applied at local community level to improve and expedite inclusive transformation in the property sector. The intervention is to be administered by local authorities in terms of statutory changes to be made by national government. So let us take a look at some of the definitions that are involved here. The best definitions I can find to match those objectives of that plan in the context of social responsibility are transformation. What does it mean? It means modifying beliefs so that natural actions result in change, and that change leads to the achievement of a desired result. So it's not just about the change, it's about modifying the beliefs that drive that change in a natural way. The next important word is inclusive. What does that mean? The best definition I can find in terms of social responsibility means including many different types of people who are treated fairly and equally. So this model is designed to embed those concepts at every level of operation. So let's get to the operational aspects of the model. So who are the parties to this initiative? There's two parties. There's the government and there's private entities working together in partnerships and teamwork. So working jointly in unison towards a common goal in the achieving of the desired results in a specific time frame. What does a goal mean? It means achieving those results in a time frame. This is very important. The model is designed to enable effective functional operation of such partnerships in the achievement of those stated objectives within predetermined time frames. Progress is measurable, and that enables intermediate intervention to adjust the time frame and the outcome. Essential oversight is embedded at all levels to ensure the effectiveness and the appropriate degrees of accountability. Flowing through from part one, let us take a look at the input requirements of the parties that are involved in these partnerships. First, there's the government. The government is there to support small business entities, starting of the EMEs, growing to SMEs, supporting the expansion into large business entities. It's also now focused on the development of youth and the women and the disabled people, and also using the existing funding facilities that are already embedded in various government departments. That's the government input. What's the private entity input? Predominantly is the provision of privately owned land for personal and community benefits. So how does this team work? What are the operatives that go on here? First of all, we have to end up with racially inclusive relationships at working level and at personal levels. We have to embed responsibility to perform in all of the team members. It requires an input of willingness to accept guidance from mentors and the willingness to accept opportunity to embrace leadership roles for those people being mentored. So let's take a look at the trading entity for the model. Before we go, the definitions of transformation and inclusivity that we spoke about earlier and some of the other stated objectives of the recovery plan, this urges us to revisit the BBEE scorecard. It seems that the appropriate structure to establish the necessary relationships seems to be an EME with more than 51% black ownership, bringing us to the level 2 scorecard. And the appropriate business entity seems to be a cooperative. Cooperative because the ownership and the benefits are based on participation, and the cooperative management is easily to achieve and adjust. The number of participants is very flexible, and the accounting practices may be initially at a very minimal level, especially if a turnover tax model is adopted. The racial composition of a co-op can be engineered to suit this purpose of the recovery plan. And co-ops are easily duplicatable, and that gives us rapid expansion potential from the very first one right through into a national structure. You will see from part 1 that the whole project is based upon teams and teamwork. So let's take a look at the composition of a typical team. Now, to achieve the objectives that we've stated, and that is stated by the recovery plan in terms of inclusiveness and transformation, every team must match with that composition. All teams in the project must be of that composition. It needs to be fully inclusive of racial mix. It needs to comprise of women, young people, and people with impaired ability. All of those need to be part of that, of every team. So South Africa is still very socially and racially polarized, and a level of social engineering is necessary to achieve transformation. And I don't think many open-minded people would dispute that. The new normal of COVID might just be the dawning of a new normal in social existence here. And this change will flow when the normal actions of the next generation are not clouded by the shadows of the past. And President Ramaphosa's statement that this initiative by the government must be a decisive and permanent break from the past, that requires such a change in the hearts and minds of all people. This model can contribute to the start of such a process. Let's take a deeper look now at some examples of a team composition. In this mix of things that we've discussed here, you'll find the magic number is 5. Inside a team, you've got 5 people. How does that work in terms of racial disbursement in the team? 2 black people, 1 Asian person, 1 colored person, 1 white person. Fully inclusive, and it totals up to 5. Gender must be 3 women and 2 males, given as a predominantly female drive as guided by the government. Look at the age content, 3 youth and 2 older people. So all of these need to be part of this mix, all mixed up there together and formed in different ways. We have to have 1 person of impaired ability in each team. That has to be there. It's a part of the program. And that person may be from any racial group or any gender. In the SME, MME co-ops, once you're developing the co-ops now as the contracting and trading entities, each of those co-ops needs to have 5 founder members. So this number 5 seems to be the magic number. So let us take a better look at the oversight for the whole project and the program. Now, this consists of small oversight teams that are specifically focused on maximizing transformation. It starts at national government level, where oversight teams will be looking at how the local authorities are monitoring all of the projects in each of those municipalities in terms of transformation. At local authority level, there will be a small oversight team which looks at the various projects that are happening within that municipal area. The project entity itself for each project will appoint internal mentoring teams, and those internal mentoring teams will look at everything that goes on within that project. It will look at the construction of the professional team, the skills training team, the sales team, and it will also look at the construction of the
project entity team itself. This ensures that all the human resources within any project will comply with the objectives of the recovery plan. So let's take a look at the trading entity itself, the project trading entity. This is the entity that will contract with all of the subcontractors and everybody that's required to complete the project. All of the subcontract co-ops and so on will all be contracted to this main project trading entity. It itself will be a primary cooperative composed of 5 people. It'll be racially and gender balanced. It'll have 1 impaired ability person, the same as all of the other teams. There'll be 5 qualified members, 4 of which appointed by the local authority, plus 1 community member selected by an interview process of those other 4. That person must not be a councillor. Now let's take a look at the reporting cycle that has to be embedded here. You have the project entity reporting directly to the local authority, and the local authority reports directly to national government. This is done by means of a monthly reporting cycle which reports the status of the work in progress and also the status of the mentoring. So when it comes to mentoring, we have a mentoring team as we described. That mentoring team is structured by the local authority, and the mentoring team also reports. It has to report in the same way every month on the status of the mentoring. Then you've got the contracting work itself going on. The local government, by normal process, does inspections of construction and works through the professional team directly through the principal agent. And that principal agent is appointed by the client, which in this case would be the project trading entity. So you get reporting coming from the site through the professional team to the principal agent into the project entity team. And at the same time you get the mentoring team reporting on the state and the composition of everything that's going on in terms of inclusivity and transformation. Each of these teams is responsible for identifying stuff, able to duplicate itself, and the main project entity is responsible for identifying 2 new projects in the local community, and that gives continuation and continuity of the whole program from one project to the next. Now let's take a look at the project training team. The training team is also a primary co-op and is composed of qualified artisans and trainers. The number of people in that team has to match the trade requirements of the project, and they must be formed by, again, the correct mix of persons. The training schedule must be sequenced to match the project work schedule set up by their project manager. That means that the training has to be an on-site facility starting before the works starts, and then it has to extend right through the period of the works. It has to cater for all the trades that are required on the project in their sequence of necessity, and that's controlled by the project entity. The training team is appointed by interview by the members of that main project entity. The local authority has the mentoring teams. The mentoring teams will also mentor the training team to make sure that the composition of it is correct, to make sure that they're doing the correct things and so on. So team members of this training team, they're appointed by an interview process, and the people are coming from the local community. Interesting, the team members also benefit from the retained project asset, and they can do that by the issue of shares. So when this project is finished and the portion of it is sold to cover all the cost, the retained asset which belongs in the project entity is going to be, the ownership of that is going to be shared in proportion to the participation of everyone.
and the benefits that flow to the training team members will also be monitored in that same way. That means as these training teams move from one thing to another year by year by year, they will be gaining generational wealth creation. Now this team is responsible for mentoring 2 new training teams during the period of this project. Now we come to the workforce. All the people and the businesses that are operational in this project will be primary cooperatives composed of 5 people. Those co-ops can have more members depending on what the particular activity is, but the basis is 5 and multiples of 5. Again, racially and gender balanced, with 1 impaired ability person. The structure of these teams has to be based on women, youth and disabled persons working together with an existing local EME or SME and formed into a contracting cooperative. That contracting cooperative is formed from existing local business by a tender process, and the constituents of the mentoring are coming through from national government, from maybe the local NYDA, the TVET colleges, etc. They'll be coming through into the training program, and they will be embedded into the construction through this process. They will be primary cooperatives in their own right. Those primary cooperatives again will benefit in the shared retained asset at the end of this project, creating generational wealth for those people. It's not just a build and get paid and disappear. This is something they're building and doing because they have ownership. Very powerful concept. The SMME, the EME entities, the trading entities that are formed into the co-op for each one will contract with the main trading entity of the project, and the contract terms will include the conditions of mentoring throughout the term of the project. So this slide now shows the overall operational structure and how it all comes together. It starts with the national government, which enables the intervention to occur in the first instance. National government also will provide funding. This funding will come to the trading entities, maybe for new startups and for maintenance of those trading entities, coming through the existing government agencies like DTI, NEF, CIFA, SPDA, and now we've got the new structural infrastructure fund that's just being developed. The government will also be supplying through its other agencies the youth, the women and the disabled people that are being fed into the project, into the training team. That training team also looks at empowering and training people from the local community and bringing them into the SMME workforce. So at local authority level now, local authority is first establishing a mentoring team. That mentoring team will be looking at many projects that are happening within each municipal area. For a particular project, the local authority will appoint and establish a project trading entity comprising of 4 local authority appointees and 1 community member. That project trading entity will now be responsible for the administration and success of the entire project. It will appoint a principal agent and a professional team. It will also then contract with all of the local SMMEs to create the workforce for the construction works. It will create an internal mentoring team that oversees all of the human resource activities that go on within the project. It will appoint a training team to bring in the local community people and also to bring in
the women, youth and disabled people coming from local authorities, coming from national government through NYDA, etc., etc. This is how it all comes together. Once this construction work is underway and complete, that will provide a physical asset that will be sold. This is the stock and the produce of the project. Now, there's no developer involved here, so this stock will be sold through a properly constructed sales team, and the amount of the project that will be sold will cover the input and the funding provided by government, and it will be repaid to government. The balance of the project is where the things become very interesting, because the project co-op will retain the balance of their assets, whatever they are. And this is for ongoing distribution to all the participating entities that were involved in the development of this project. And they will be benefited in proportion to their contributed value. And we can go into how that's established a little bit later. But in doing this, what we're creating here is ownership. We're creating not just a temporary job situation, we're creating an asset base which retains after the project is finished and is owned by that local community and all the people that participated in the development of that project. Ownership creates pride, ownership creates motivation for people to do things right, because it's not just working for somebody else, it's about developing something which belongs to me and my family. It's a very powerful concept, and it's missing from everything that's been done in the past. Now let us look at the nature and the structure of the cooperatives in terms of the ability to expand quickly and to grow nationally throughout the country. So the objective here is to create a duplication of a generic system for a rapid national growth. From one project to another, all similar co-ops will have the same structure, the same operational processes and the same objectives. And the purpose of a co-op is not only to do its work within the project, but to mentor two identical co-ops. So by the time that project is finished, there's 3 qualified entities ready to move on to 3 new projects. So this little diagram would show that. You have a pilot project number 1. Each of those pilot projects, through the process of the term of the project, is mentored 2 new teams, 2 and 3, and then it would start another one that would be the 4th project. So one will mentor 2 and 3 and then start a new project 4. Similarly, 2 and 3 will start new projects and new teams through the course of their projects. Number 2 would go create 5 and 6 and then start number 7 itself. The number 3 would go 8 and 9 and then start another project itself. So guys, this creates exponential growth. Exponential growth is something very, very different than what's happening throughout the country, project by project. That's called linear maintenance, even just growing at a linear rate. It has no growth factor built into it. It's just doing one thing in sequence after another, because there's no structure formed within those systems that is designed to create exponential growth. So exponential growth is done by design, which is embedded here. And it's a process with an R value that's greater than 1. And that R value is so important. It's like COVID itself. You know, the bigger the R value, the quicker the spread. And the exponential rate at which the program and the model can grow flows from the effectiveness of the mentoring and the period of time for each project. Exponential growth also of local authority mentoring and the oversight teams will substantially increase permanent employment in that sector. And it will all be subsidized by the project, as the cost of the teams is already built into each project and is recovered from the sales. This R value for any project may be increased at any time based on the reporting by intervention. And so if you want something to happen quicker, you just increase the number of people and you will get a direct proportional increase in the R value rate. So what does that look like in the longer term? In the long term, this can create by its own structure a massive corporate structure of local district projects happening all over the country. This example shows the expansion from just 4 generations of growth starting from the pilot, and it results in 60 local projects in a very short space of time. And all of those people are being trained and mentored through the previous projects. The next 4 generations after that would deliver a massive 400 projects, an additional 400 projects. So just look at the diagram starting from the pilot. The pilot was generating 2 new models, 2 and 3, and each of those are generating 2 models, and each of those is generating 2 models, and each of those is generating 2 models. That's 4 generations. That could be happening in just a few short years. So where do you start with this? Now, the Constitution of South Africa, Chapter 7, Sections 151, 52, 53, 56 empowers local authorities to act at this level. So acceptance of this model by the eThekwini municipality in this case, and the local chambers of commerce, the various institutes of professional bodies in the industry, SACAP, ECSA, and the Municipal Workers Union, this would be a good place to start. And it would be an appropriate springboard for a pilot budget to be obtained from the Infrastructure Recovery Program. From there, expansion could easily be implemented based on the results of that pilot. So that covers some of the operational issues of this new model. As part two of the presentation, there's a part 3 which covers the scope of work of the project teams. That's available and will be sent as a separate presentation. It will result in an inclusive property development model based on social transformation, targeted, needs-based at a district development level. It's for application as a government intervention in terms of the South African Economic Recovery Program. Part 1, if you didn't see it, as stated before, you can get it through this YouTube link. Go there, go through that one, go again through this one, and then we'll make available part 3, which will look at the scope of work of all of these different elements of the team. Thank you guys, thanks for looking at this model, and let us see if we can make it work.